Now, academic research does not include Google, by the way. But when we talk about academic research, we are talking about real scholastic research, where different sources are sought, comparisons are made, and rigid tests of proof are sought out. A lot of times, with scholastic research, one is able to clearly elucidate on the facts concerning specific things, and in this case we are talking about spirituality. One is able to elucidate it from a place of being well informed. Because you would hear many people would talk about Ifa and about spirituality and about culture and about tradition, but yet many of them are not able to differentiate. Now, because of colonization or because of colonial influence, a lot of confusion has been created to the point where many people do not see the line that separates a religion from spirituality. Spirituality has been very much incorporated into religion, and while religion has been manipulated in order to control many and to subjugate many, spirituality in its pure form has never been used or abused in the same way. So anytime we're talking about decolonizing, we have to decolonize all aspects of our culture that has been infiltrated and manipulated by the colonizers for their own advantage. So spirituality has been suppressed, but religion has been largely manipulated. Now, when we talk about decolonizing, it would apply mainly to religion and not to spirituality, because spirituality was never colonized. It has been repressed, it has been subjugated, but it has maintained its purity where our practice is concerned, and where we have been able to successfully keep out the colonizing factors. There is a very important distinction. I want to talk about culture and tradition. The root word of culture is cult, which has to do with growing something or leading something in a particular direction. And when we talk about culture, we're talking about leading others into the way of our predecessors. That is how our culture continues and survives. When we talk about tradition, the root word of tradition is trade. So a tradition could be a skill, it could be a way of operating that one is trained to do. And I would give an example. Due to colonization, in many lands where people were the indigenous, the original people, and had their tradition, their way of life, colonization introduced a totally different lifestyle that we would refer to as tradition. They introduced factories, churches, schools, and many things that changed the ori and the mind and the thinking of the indigenous people. So what they introduced was tradition, because they taught you how to work for money. They taught you how to think. They taught you how to worship. And all of these different things that they have taught all interlock and work with each other to subjugate, destroy, and oppress. Whereas the cultural ways of people, the folk ways of indigenous people, has nothing to do with trade. A good example of the colonization of people would be a calendar. The indigenous people of West Africa never had a 7-day week. That was introduced by the Europeans. They had a 4-day week. And they had 7 weeks in a month, which made up 28 days, which is a lunar cycle. So they counted time by the moon. And the breakdown of the 4 days has to do with the 4 elements. And it has to do with the 4 market days that was designed to recognize the different energies as they come in and out, as the energy varies from male to female, from left to right, from up to down, from front to back. These are the cycles that are recognized, even within the 28 days period. When you have the full moon, and then 14 days from that, the new moon, and then another 14, the full moon. These are the cycles that govern all of the activities, mainly because the moon is the closest planet to the earth. So therefore, its influence is marked. Hence, our ancestors would have used the lunar cycles to determine when it's best to plant, when it's best to travel if they have to cross rivers, or if they have to travel by the ocean. They knew which time was best based on the cycle of the moon. So for those who want to say, well, no, it's not astrology. If you are planning your events by the motion of a celestial body, it is astro-logic, from which the word astrology came. So there is a distinction between the European 7-day calendar and the cultural, indigenous practice of measuring time by the cycles of the moon. 13 moons make a year. All right? Now, once one look at the etymology of words, one would be able to discover and unlock a lot of truth. So therefore, anytime we are having conversations about scholastic research, one has to look at language, how it is used, what the words that you use to express your ideas, what they originally meant, and how they have changed over time, and how the usage has changed over time. You cannot use a modern context to read an ancient document, because the way in which words were used back then is different to the way that words are used today. So one must study even the words that one uses in order to have a very clear picture of what was taking place at any point in the past. Now, let's talk a little bit about this term that is used, because we use many trendy terms to describe our practices. You would hear some people talk about, including myself, sometimes I use the term African traditional religion. We understand what religion is, and what we know is religion is a very small part of culture. Because when one looks at tradition, our tradition incorporates all aspects of life, not just one part. Religion is one part, and it's a very minute part. But what happens in our communities, how we live, how we dress, how we eat, how we worship, these are the things that makes up our culture. Our tradition, only because of colonial influence, makes up today what we do to earn money. It's a commercial system that was introduced as a means of oppression. Now, spirituality is not just something that our ancestors had. All human beings who have ancestors at some point in the past would have practiced what is referred to as universal spirituality. In all different cultures, the manifestation of this spirituality is contextualized by their environment, by their language, and by the way people live. But given the fact that we are all one human family, we know that once man started traveling and going to different places and different spaces, man would have had to adapt rather.